Hello everyone and welcome to one more episode of Strictly Quantum. Here we will be talking more about the things that you have seen in the EK keynote which you saw earlier, and well, let's just get things rolling.
Armed.
Welcome back to the EK studio. Here with me we have Joe, Robey, lead R&D designer, and this time around we will be also reading your comments, feedback, so we will have a nice interaction going on. And of course, as we mentioned, we will be talking more about the products which you have seen showcased in the EK EXPO keynote, and we will try to cover all of your questions, and we will try to explain everything about the upcoming products and maybe even gather some ideas from you which we could implement in these new upcoming products. So opening just like we had for the expo when we were speaking about the quantum custom loop line of products, we had the radiators, so we will just kick off with the radiators themselves. We will start with the naming. So we have the S, P and X. It is very similar like we had before. We just ditched the E because there's no point of having the letter which is the same on like all of the radiators. So first we will ask Joe what has changed with the S. What are the major differences of the new S radiator compared to the old one?
So the new S has really been brought up to speed, and we have new internals across all three sizes, but the S gets the biggest change as we tried to increase the core thickness that we have packaged inside the radiator. So the fins are much bigger proportionally to the outer casing, so it's much closer in surface area to the old P. There's a lot more tubes, so it will be less restrictive hydraulically, not just for the airflow, and also a little bit wider, so they're full width, 130 millimeters, just like the bigger P and X.
So this is something when we say that we will improve. We will just not improve the overall the overall performance of the product, but we will also improve the flow restriction because there is no point of having a really high performance product which would ruin your entire loop by being way too restrictive. So way back when we had the reviews of our old Coolstream S radiators was in 2015, and then they weren't the best in these reviews. So hopefully this time around we will be expecting much more better results from our S line of radiators. What can we say about the 120 versus the 140 size of the radiators? Which are the key things which will be the same on these products?
So the key thing which will be the same across every single radiator now is the position of the ports. So no matter which distro plate you have, it will be compatible with every size of radiator. Unlike right now, we have to prescribe, okay, the P fits there at the top in that case, and the X fits at the bottom, and this will be far more open. And also, because the 120s and the 140s have the same spacing, that also means you have some more freedom to swap while still having really nice or even directly mated tubing to the distro plate.
This is actually the main topic of our show, Matrix 7. So we will be jumping back and forward between all of these products which you have seen us show. So the radiators and the CPU blocks and the GPU blocks, so that you understand more what is Matrix 7 all about. But let's talk more about the radiators themselves. So we are bringing the multiport radiators to the P and the X line, and we will also bring cross-flow radiators also to the P and the X line, right?
Yeah, for a start, every single P and X model will be a multiport. So the conventional U-flow rads have 5 ports, 2 on the top face where you would expect, 2 on the end with the same spacing, and 1 at the opposite end, either for a drain valve if it's at the bottom, or a bleed valve if it's at the top.
Also, all of the radiators will be available in white. And by all of the radiators, we mean literally all of the radiators which we will make will be also available in white version. Of course, the fins won't be painted white because that would be a waste of paint, and we will be also impacting the performance of the radiator itself. Painting something that is not white requires a lot of paint, so we would have to apply a lot of paint to the fins to like actually paint it white, and then we would just ruin the whole performance of the radiator. So that's why the fins will remain black, which will be having a special heat conductive paint on it, so that everything works nicely. Also mentioning the fans, we will make sure that the white radiators will be also the same white color as the fan, so that you don't have some strange beige white and then a bluish white on the radiators, and you have mismatched things. Regarding the comments, we have already seen some questions about the radiators. So the way we presented the radiators, we have the end caps silver color. This would be extruded aluminum, but we are also getting feedback that people might want full black radiators. So Joe, why did we present the radiators with silver end caps?
Well, mostly we wanted to show the material. We wanted to show that this is a solid piece of machined aluminium, and it would be matching the satin titanium and elements of the magnitude and vector FE that are really fashionable right now in liquid cooling. So we revealed it with these silver end pieces, and it gives a nice continuity between the black and the white model, and it also makes it obvious. But of course, lots of people just want all black, so we will definitely deliver that either as a default option, or perhaps as an accessory to replace this end piece with a black version. Lots of things about the new radiators are quite modular, so the end pieces are obviously the same no matter which length of radiator you have, but the fittings themselves that fit inside these pieces the plug and the extender is the same on every model, so we can offer different parts. You can swap the parts around, and potentially extenders and rotaries and other interesting stuff that fits directly to the radiator instead of on a second fitting.
I would just like to say hi to Andy D Lab. She is doing awesome stuff, so check her out. She is also doing cars. We are also huge car fans beside our liquid cooling passion. So hi to Andy. The next topic that we will be covering is the fans. So we have actually decided to work on the fans and the radiators at the same time, because these two things have to work perfectly to have the best performance, and that's why we have developed them at the same time. Regarding the fans, we will have two types of fans, because some of the customers want high performance and some want full-on RGB, so maximum RGB for the fans. But if you implement RGB illumination in the frame, that means that the fan blade has to be a bit smaller, which means that you lose performance, and this is why we have the high performance fan, which has the biggest possible blade for the frame size, and we have the RGB version. Joe, what can you tell us about the phase, which will be the high-end EK Quantum fan, which will be coming around November, right?
Yep, around November the 120 versions will be available. They will have black with DRGB, white with DRGB blades, and an all black version with no lighting. They pull some features from the X3M, some from the classic Vada, so a really clean frame design on the outside, as you would expect. They should look great against the new radiators, and then also the corners are interchangeable. They just clip on with no screws, and you'll be able to get all the colors like we offer with torque and with the coolant, so the whole color scheme can really come together. And the blades themselves have been updated. The frame has quite a bit of work. You can see they have a really different spider arrangement to any earlier EK fans, and I'm sure the most noted difference will be the maglev bearings and motors.
Why is the frame important when you are doing liquid cooling? So we have the signature full frame design, and we would just want to highlight why is this frame so important to liquid cooling.
Yeah, and this is a really big deal. Every fan is measured for a dense heatsink or for a radiator in its static pressure, and if you have a hole behind it, if you have a place for the air to escape, that's a place for the pressure to escape behind the fan. So the effective static pressure, if you have an open frame, is zero.
Yep.
And you're just relying on the restriction through the radiator to be less than the hole, and you get maybe half the airflow. So it's really important that it makes a nice fit against the radiator, that it's tight and it's closed on all sides. And this isn't just about the fan design either. Also, the radiator has to be designed that there's a nice mating face on all sides, and that where the end pieces, the aluminium pieces, wrap inside, they have a smooth edge to the steel, and there's no big gaps there too.
I see that we have Ben on the chat.
Hey Ben.
Hi Ben. Ben is asking, will we have satin titanium color radiators? I think that we will be able to make the end pieces satin titanium, but since we like to work with Ben, maybe we will make all sorts of special one-off things just for him to do his awesome builds. Regarding questions. We had a question earlier about the fans. Will the fans be chain linkable? And the answer is yes. Should we talk about the way that we will make them linkable, or you think it's too soon?
I think we can say. I think we can say exactly how now. So we will have a special connector for each fan with 8 pins, not a proprietary unstandard connector, but a standard connector between each fan that's latched. You'll see which one as they come, and then so each fan will have a male and a female connection that is the exact length of the fan, and then when you add a subsequent fan, they just plug together, and then you can choose the right length or right type of extender to either link 2 fans back to the individual fan and RGB header on the motherboard, or a whole series of 20 fans, even directly to the power supply and to a PWM control.
Actually, we have a question about the performance fan, the phase fan, and the question is, why is the motor hub so large on the performance version? Actually, it is not all that big. I mean, it is standard size, but it can be smaller. But I think that it will come down to the motor itself, that you have to have space for the motor, and you also have to have room for the LEDs.
It's not just that. This is more of an airflow reason, because if you imagine the blade right next to the hub is only spinning or is only traveling at a fraction of the speed as the tip of the blade. So at the center period, at the center of the fan, it's hard to create a high static pressure, and that can mean at low RPM the flow actually reverses through the center, and the slow moving part of the blade doesn't push any air down. It's just not fast enough.
So basically all of the performance of the fan happens at the tip, and this is why manufacturers are like making the gap between the frame and the tip as small as possible, because if you have a big gap, then you have just air escaping backwards. Question about the radiators. We will jump back to the radiators. When are the new radiators gonna be available? We won't be able to launch them all at the same time, but I believe Joe has some more insight into the timeline on how will we execute the launch.
Yeah, so you can expect a staggered release from us. The P120s, obviously the favorites, will be coming first, and then followed up by the S120, X120, and then through the 140s. So they should hopefully coincide with our fan releases. But again, these are all huge products. They all take some time to build inventory of, not just for us, but for the resellers. And so we can't bombard them all with huge pallets of radiators at the same time.
Fans. So let's talk about the RGB fans. So the Impulse. This will be a heavy RGB fan. So it will have 12 LEDs in the frame, and it will have 6 LEDs under the motor hub. What's special about this fan, Joe?
Of course, lots and lots of LEDs. So visible from the front side, the rear side, and also the edges of the fan. So they wrap over and have a really nice structural element within each side that helps to even out the lighting and give a nice smooth effect around the fan.
Yeah. So we have mentioned that the high performance fan we will have in with the black frame and the RGB blades. We will have the white frame with the RGB blades, and we will have a all black version, so black frame and black blades. And for the RGB version of the fan, we will just have the black frame and the RGB blades, and the white frame and the RGB blades, as you can see on the screen right now. So this will be the lineup of the fans. The phase high performance fan can be expected around November, and the 120 version.
Yep.
Then you can expect the RGB version around CES, also the 120 version, and then we will be consequently rolling out the 140 of the phase and the 140 of the RGB version of the fan.
We have a great question about fan speeds. So the phase fans are going to run up to 2000 RPM, so a nice controllable range for the loop. You don't need a super high speed fan. Of course, we'll still have an equivalent replacement for the Furious when the time comes. So they run from 500 to 2000, and the impulse is just a little bit slower.
We see a question about the Delta Tech. Actually, we will have a small update on the Delta Tech actually quite soon. We will have a version of the current Delta Tech CPU block with a more powerful tech plate in it. This will be quite a limited amount of blocks available, and then we will be preparing something even more special for future times, but we won't talk about any details at this moment. Regarding the products which you have seen in our EK EXPO keynote, if you haven't watched it, please go check it out again so that you know that what we are talking about now are the CPU blocks. So there is quite a lot going on with the new CPU blocks. You can see some of them on the table here. So we have actual physical samples now, not just 3D renders. And also we will also explain when we will be talking more about the matrix why we have shown everything using 3D renders. This is not just because we have awesome people who can do 3D renders, but it's also a more strategic decision why did we went for 3D renders. So the Velocity 2 CPU blocks, which is actually written squared, but we will be referring it to as the Velocity 2 blocks. Joe, what is the most interesting thing about the new CPU blocks?
I think that the most striking thing that separates it from every CPU block that's gone before from EK is the fact that it covers the whole socket, and this is no longer a small block with the mounting mechanism extending, but the mechanism is actually inside, and the work we had to put in to make that possible, still achieve a good mounting pressure and not have some screw disrupting the front of the design, and like screws in different places on different socket versions and stuff like that, has been really intricate. You have a completely seamless no screw look on the acetal block, which is absolutely stunning, and even the Plexi one hides its mounting because we actually packaged everything inside and it's mounted from the back for the first time.
We have seen the versions which will be available, so it's the three basic versions, so nickel Plexi, nickel acetal, and the full nickel version of the block will be available. Regarding RGB implementation, the Plexi version will have the standard full RGB implementation, having the RGB strip from the right side, and as you can see, the acetal version will have a nice subtle white line which is actually illuminated when the RGB is on. Regarding the port spacing, there's also something special about the port spacing, which we will come back to later when we'll be talking about Matrix 7, and you see that everything will make sense. There's also something new about the cold plates. This is something that we picked up from Magnitude, right?
Yep. So there's a lot of tech inside from Magnitude. We did some absolutely insane things to get that to the level it's at, and surprisingly, some of them were extremely simple, and we're enabled to implement them across every block now, because we're making the top specific to each socket, so it fits perfectly whether it's on Intel or AMD. It's not a universal top anymore. That logic extends through the whole thing, so the cold plate is also specific to the socket, and they all have their curvature machined, so they're turned in a lathe with a very slight radius, like several meters, so a really slight radius. And this helps the center to contact the IHS nicely where it matters. Chiplets typically in the center on Intel, and for AMD they actually have a geometry machined into the opposite side of the cold plate, so where it's pushed down, it meets the area where the chiplets are first. And if the highest pressure is applied over the chiplets, that means the paste is thinner there, and thinner paste is inherently more conductive, because as you know, the conductivity is watts per meter Kelvin, so rather than improving the paste, if you just shorten the distance, then the performance increase is much better. So this simple idea to make the contact specific to each CPU structure really moves things forwards. And also on the inside they have some biasing of the flow, so it's not spread evenly throughout the entire block, but on the Intel sockets it's focused to the center, and on the AMD socket it's focused towards the extreme where the chiplets are.
A question about the fans from ALT or ALT, how do you say it? Will the new fans have this 0 RPM mode? The answer is yes. All of the fans will have the 0 RPM mode, meaning that below 25% of the the PWM signal they will stop, and they will also keep the feature that if there is no PWM signal they will run at full speed. So if you want to blow out dust or something like that, just yank the cable. Getting back to the new CPU blocks, there's a very special thing going on about the mounting mechanism, which is also patent pending, and Joe is going to explain why it's special, because it's not only just hidden inside the block, but there's also some magic going on inside the block itself.
Yeah, so on the front side of the block, if the mounting's in the traditional place, you obviously have all of the height in the world to place the thumb nut, to have space for the spring to be at its free length, and then compress it. But if you want to flip that around and put it on the back of the motherboard, then everything needs to go in the narrow gap between the PCB and the chassis. So it needs to end up there, and that means it can't be so long that you just put a spring on the backside. So the spring's on the front, and it needs to be held in compression. So the spring is not free inside the block, but it's squished the whole time, and that means that the standoff, which goes through the whole assembly and out through the PCB and through the backplate, always sticks out. So when you just sit the block down on the board, these threaded pins all stick out, and they're available to start tightening the thumb nut on the backside. The other big deal is it would have been really fiddly to hold this from the front, or engage a screwdriver from the front and turn from the back. So this stud, which goes through everything, can't spin inside the block. So there's nothing to do. Like the board just sits down on the block, and you turn the screw, and the pin only moves a millimeter, just a fraction, and that also makes it very difficult to tighten unevenly, because the block can't sit at a strange angle and then get pulled one side faster than the other.
even though having the whole mounting from the back side eventually will make everything much simple, because if you look at a regular CPU block now, so mostly you would have the back plate, then you have the rubber gasket, then you would have to place the washers on the board, then you mount the pins, then you mount the block, and then you mount the springs, and then you tighten the thumb nut itself. But with the new mounting system, basically you have only three parts. You have the block, which would have everything inside it. You would have the back plate and the screws, and that's it. You have the block mounted, and every time you would get perfect mounting pressure instantly. Getting back to some of the questions we saw about RAM blocks, will we have a dual X2 RAM block? And I think the answer is no, right?
We will be coming with a 4-slot RAM block.
Yeah.
They still move quite nicely. We still see them being assembled every other week when we come into work, so they must be going somewhere. And people still want to cool the RAM just for the visuals, so yeah, this is something we'll continue and give it some RGB treatment in the coming months. Of course, the CPU blocks will be a priority. We also had a great question about the monoblocks and how this mounting mechanism and ecosystem that we've created with the velocity relates to the monoblock, and they actually it goes a bit deeper than that. So the mounting mechanism at the moment sits at a slightly different height no matter which socket you have it on, because the AMD chip is lower than the Intel one, and apparently some chips in the future may be different. So rather than change the mounting mechanism every time now, we will set the height of both the top and the bottom of the block, so the mounting mechanism is identical, just the backplate changes, and the cold plate itself changes in height, so the cold plate makes up the difference between AM4 and LGA 1200, and that means we have a consistent height to build other products off. And this goes for both the CPU only version and the monoblocks, which will come. They will also feature the spring to give it the perfect mounting pressure in the center, and all of the geometry tweaks, the flow tweaks, and everything that brings the performance to the CPU block will be duplicated on the monoblock.
So if you are taking notes, then keep in mind the height of the CPU block, which will be the same all of the time, and we will be mentioning this topic again when we get to Matrix 7. But first we have also a few questions. Pascal is asking, will we need a special controller for the fan? So while we said that we will have a special plug on the fan itself, we will have regular RGB and PWM plugs on the other end of the cable. So we will keep everything industry standard, so that there's no proprietary plugs, no special controllers to run the new fans. So you can just plug it into your motherboard or any other fan controller which will be supporting standard connections. Next question, how will the velocity 2 blocks stack against the old velocity and the magnitude?
So quite conveniently, with some of the tech of magnitude, but not absolutely everything, they should sit in the middle. And by that, the thermal performance should in fact be very close to magnitude, but the flow restriction will be closer to velocity, because it was necessary to make quite sharp turns to flatten out the block and to move the ports off center, whereas neither port goes directly inside the cooling engine. So compared with earlier blocks, these have more internal changes, but changes in direction for the coolant, but the fins themselves are not super dense. They're the same format as magnitude, which is the best ratio between fin and slot possible, so that you get all the cooling potential without a big restriction. But at the same time, the internals are not like 3D machined in the same way as magnitude, that has everything radiused, which is the best for flow restriction, because you have the least surface area for the highest cross section. Squares is not quite so good, but much more effective to machine.
Yeah. Bumpy. We had a question about workstation CPU blocks. So will we make any new workstation CPU blocks? And the answer is yes. I don't have a timeline. Joe, do you know anything more about the Pro Series blocks? Oh, about the Pro Series GPU blocks, we will make Pro Series GPU blocks for the A100, A4000 and A6000, releasing a few weeks, maybe a month, something like that. But about these CPU blocks, maybe Joe can tell more.
Yep, so the Pro ecosystem will keep expanding, and that means they will get updates to all the GPU blocks, all of the industrial grade Ampere cards, as well as LGA 4189, and I believe some refreshed LGA 3647. I'm not sure about STRX4, but that's something that industrial department is using in the fluid work system, so I think there's potential for all of those to enter the Pro line.
I see one more question about the CPU blocks. Will the inlet and the outlet be specific? Yes, it will. You can always reverse it and lose some performance, but we will have the lower port as a in, because mostly when you're doing your liquid cooling loop, everything starts from the bottom, so you have the pump at the bottom, and then you go to your GPU, and from the GPU then to the CPU, and then upwards. But there's also one more neat trick about placing the ports vertically, which we'll be talking about later when we touch on Matrix 7. But first we have to talk about the GPU block itself. So the GPU block will be also facelifted. It's gonna bring new features, and it also has to do a lot with the Matrix 7 itself. Joe, what's special about the Vector 2 GPU blocks?
So the Vector 2s, as well as the design update, which the Velocity got, so they all have full cover plexi, as you would expect on plexi, and the end piece is now square on the exterior, and the LEDs curve around nicely on the inside. The acetal counterparts and full nickel, where applicable. We won't have full nickel on every block, but as you've seen, we now have some full nickel GPU blocks on the popular options, and these will get the same thin lighting strip that you saw on the CPU, so a really fine trace of RGB lighting between the two black pieces. And this is just because we see a lot of people don't like to have a full white piece in their build. It's not that everyone wants that contrast theme, and if you're going for all black, then the new lighting implementation is really discreet. This lighting also wraps onto the back side, so between the backplate and the end piece, the light continues around, so if it's horizontal you still see it next to the CPU block, looking super coordinated, and of course a similar number of diodes, so there'll be equal brightness for the first time, and that also extends back to plexi. So plexi has the strip along the longest edge of the GPU, and it will shine forwards into the terminal around every edge of the block. It should be a lot more even and a lot closer brightness between like right now, a magnitude, just the tiny block has almost 30 diodes, and some of the GPUs had 9, so or less, and we really wanted to unify that so that every EK product has the same brightness, the same color, and I think most other GPU topics are gonna push us into Matrix 7.
This is exactly what I wanted to mention, that if we want to maybe we can first talk about the brass insert with the GPU block cooling engine, and we can mention the backplate, but afterwards everything that we mentioned about the new GPU blocks, upcoming GPU blocks, will have to do something with Matrix 7. So what's special about the insert that we will use on the new blocks?
So for the first time, we won't have a jet plate again. We'll combine what is currently a plexi insert with a steel plate into one part, and this means that we can sculpt the entry geometry to the fins a little bit more, and this will become three-dimensional. So the speed of the coolant entering each fin is controlled, and we can have a much more even spread from the first fin to the last fin, because if you have a parallel passage, then that means the last fins inherently get much more flow than the first ones. So this is a great chance to balance that out, and also means the jet plate's permanently in place, machined into the same piece, and there will be no kind of surfaces in which there is plexi against plexi for coolant to get stuck and stuff like that.
About the backplate, what's special about the new GPU block backplate?
So the new backplate will wrap around the side of the card all the way down to the top. So not just over the PCB like we have it now, not just over the gap, but also over the edge of the copper part of the cold plate. And they can make some contact to help assist the backplate on 3090s and cards with rear-mounted VRAM, and also completely enclose the side so that you don't see any PCB, you don't see the uneven surfaces behind power connectors and stuff like that. It should just be cable, no visible PCB, and it will look a lot more like you would expect a modern cooler to.
Actually, mentioning backplates and stuff like that, we've seen a question pop up about the 3090 Founders Edition Special Edition Active Backplate Cooling. When are we going to launch it? And I believe it's already in the shop, and you can order it, and yeah, order it. One more question from Pascal. He asked, why did we stop making full board monoblocks? Well, we didn't actually stop making them. We just did one for Asus. It's not a one monoblock. It's a ultra block, as we like to call it, because it is cooling the CPU, the VRM. It is also cooling the M.2 slot. It's also cooling the chipset, and it has a screen. It has a flow meter. It has a temperature sensor. And did I miss anything?
And the leak sensors.
Leak sensor, yeah. So we haven't stopped them, but it was financially challenging to like make full board monoblocks for like regular motherboards, because motherboards recently all have nice covers and shields, which were quite often heat pipe connected to like other heat sinks on the board, meaning that if you would want to remove one heatsink, you would have to remove half of the board itself to like actually remove the heatsink. And if we would want to make a full board cooling, that means that we would have to make a replacement cover for the board itself. So this is why it stopped. If we would see opportunities to do this more, we would do it. And I hope that we answered your question regarding this.
There was a whole host of reasons why it became unfeasible. Not that it's impossible,
Yeah.
but also the chipset power draw really went down from the X79 days. Even the AM4s, which occasionally had fans and will
Switch.
soon be all fanless again. They really don't need active cooling on a chipset, but that's not to say we don't like it. When boards had lots of individual heat sinks and often quite basic ones on the chipset, it was really nice for us to replace it with a block. But now the lower half of motherboards typically looks great, and it's all integrated with their M2 heat sinks and stuff that we don't have space or the practical means to make a block that covers. It would be super annoying if you had to unmount your entire motherboard to change an SSD.
This would actually boil down also to our regular monoblocks, where you would have the VRM heatsink like a integrated part of the IO cover. We had the Asus Rampage Encore, right? That was the first motherboard when we had to machine a separate IO shield, which you would replace if you would want to install our liquid cooling. And we will have the same for the Maximus 13 Hero, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That will be launching, I guess, soon, in a matter of weeks, I guess. So there's a hot tip: we will be launching a monoblock for the Maximus 13 Hero. Back to the GPU blocks, and what's special about the GPU blocks, and how does that bring us to Matrix 7? So all of the new GPU blocks will have a certain width, and all of the new GPU blocks will be using a thick gold plate.
Yep.
Which means that the ports will be on the copper itself, not the plexi, and we also have a thicker terminal, and there's much reason for all of these to be done.
Yep, so the reason why we showed absolutely every product again in one presentation will suddenly become quite apparent, and that's that we're trying to unify the port placement across every product. So CPU block, GPU block, monoblock, distro plate, radiators will all come together and all work as one, like we've never seen before. So right now, even just the spacing between the ports is different across every product. You can see like a velocity has 25.5, a magnitude has 29, GPUs have 29, some have 28, the radiators roll around them. So not only that, but also the thickness of each product was varying. So the installation height of a CPU, like we discussed earlier, the top surface could be any height from the motherboard, and any monoblock could be different at the same time. And the vertical position of the ports on a GPU block, it was always similar, but it wasn't always identical. If it was mounted on the plexi, then it gets pushed down. If it was on the copper, it was a bit higher. And we are realizing that when you try and make a distro plate for all of that stuff, it's perfect for one set of hardware, but not everybody's hardware. And we want to be able to offer a full ecosystem that any block, any radiator, anything you pick from us will work or can be made to work easily with our products. That means that a torque fitting, an extender that exists or an offset that already exists will be able to make up the difference, and you could have any of the radiators with any distro plate. So that's why we've been obsessing with 7, and you can see a difference in 7mm on every product. So the ones which you see right now are the extenders and the offset fittings in 7, 14 and 28. The same goes now for the radiators, that they're 30, 44 and 58mm thick. So when you apply those 2 sizes of extenders, they're all the same size conveniently, and this will continue to the GPU blocks, that the overall width from the PCB of the motherboard to the line of the ports will be fixed by increments of 7. So if a PCB was 2mm wider, we would add an extra 5 and make the block overall 7mm beyond. And so there will probably be 3 sets of blocks, one for references, one for AMD and smaller aftermarket cards, and one for the widest, for the Strix, for the Trios and the biggest PCBs out there. And then with a 7mm offset or a 14, you can make it back up to the position on the distro plate.
This is actually very painful when you have a port which is only a like few millimeters sideways. There's nothing you can do with it, because making a small bend like that isn't possible. Offsetting it is also not possible, because it's a really small difference, so that you can just have your tube going sideways, and that's it. So with this Matrix 7 we would keep everything tight. Everything will be possible to build liquid cooling loops much easier, faster, and without doing intricate bends.
Yeah, so no tiny bends, no places where you need to make up a nominal distance, and when things get close to each other, like a radiator close coupled to a distro plate, then it's not okay. Is there some magic sequence of fittings that might just fit together and make this line up? But it will be obvious that you pick this extender with that rotary, and then a male-to-male rotary, and it bolts directly up to it. Or perhaps even one day the radiator can just slide directly onto the distro plate with its end ports. So
we have a viewer from Russia, and I know some of these letters, and he's asking if I'm right. Are the new radiators going to be much more expensive?
Yeah, you totally know that.
Yeah.
We will see a small but not a major increase in the radiator price. Obviously, we have a few more individual pieces in them to offer the multi-ports, to offer the extensions and the nice modular construction, but not a monstrous increase. This isn't the magnitude of radiators. This is just an update to what we had.
We also have VSG in the chat. Hello, VSG. Thanks for your nice reviews. And he's asking, when will we have a full nickel block with my name engraved on it? And I think that we can make this happen. So, questions. When are the new CPU blocks going on sale? September, right? Something like that.
Yeah, we hope we can come quite fast with the AM4 and the LGA 1200 versions, and go from there. So We may even see the Plexi version ahead, slightly ahead of the other ones. We will see how quickly we get to magnitude levels of performance.
We are keep getting the question about the new O11 distro plates. So if you watched our Expo keynote, there you have seen the render where you had the new CPU block, GPU block, and obviously there was a distro plate named Reflection 2. So when can we expect that one?
Yeah, we did notice that in our comments coming through about the O11. I guess this is the new Founders Edition clan. Now we've appeased every single possibility with the Founders Edition. It's back to O11 distro. So we were holding off on this because of Matrix 7 and how it all relates together. Of course, now you've seen we've changed the CPU block port position, the GPUs will become normalized, the same for all the radiators, and that means all of these changes will need to be mirrored onto the distribution plates. We will update, improve, fix some of the other issues that have made distribution plates a challenge. When we made them for the first time, it was a really new thing. There were no hugely available distro plates that fit with an entire ecosystem of parts that existed, and that brought out so many challenges that we couldn't fix with the distro plates alone. It had to be updated through every single product, and now we're at the point where we can offer the complete package together. So it's really exciting that things will become as simple as it looked like they were. So yeah, we'll see definitely new distros for the O11s. Also, the Fractal XLs will get their own dedicated distro, because the one which we have was actually made for the R6, and it just so happened that it fit okay into the 7XL, but it's not as good as it could have been. It doesn't have the radiator alignment quite right, so all of that stuff will get improved for the new things. But the exciting news from Matrix 7 is also that this will become, we hope, a standard that we can provide to people entering the chassis market. So if they want a generic distribution plate, a Matrix 7 pure vanilla undiluted distro plate that they can just make a mounting for, and then everything else aligns, and they align their radiators accordingly, then that means we can offer distro plates for far more stuff, and hopefully this is something we see across a bunch of case manufacturers, because this is something which they always come to us when they've almost finished making their case and say, is this perfect for liquid cooling? Like,
yeah,
not quite. You could do this, but then we still have to make a specific distro for it to make it that easy. And if we can have a universal distro along with Matrix 7 compliance from the case side as well as the products that go into it, then things will become far more diverse, and we won't have to look at the exact same O11 build from everybody.
I have a special sensor for active backplate questions, and I see that Agent 47 is asking about the EVGA for the Win 3090 3080 active backplate, and it's already in the shop. We have pre-orders open. Shipping date should be end of June, so I think if you order them, actually we have a queue on it, so that the first one who have ordered it will be receiving it the first, but I don't think that there will be a huge delay if you order it right now. VSG, any updates on the case design shown on CES? Actually, yeah, the cases that were shown on CES was the desk mount one, and we have shown the external cooling unit for the O11D. No specific news on these ones yet, but I can say that the vertical mini ITX case, which was shown on the last Computex, will actually be made. We don't have a time frame yet, but it is confirmed that yes, we will bring it to the market. So we will have a exciting liquid cooling specific mini ITX case, which can actually pack all of your liquid cooling and show it off at the same time. About Matrix 7, Joe mentioned that we will be trying to reach out to case manufacturers. Actually, we have 2 confirmed which are on board, but we won't mention any names yet. And we are hoping that this will really become a standard, so that you can build liquid cooling loops with ease, so that you don't have to waste hours and days figuring out how can you route your tubes and which fittings that you need to buy to make it work. Alexander is asking about will we make the reference 6900 XT in the new Vector 2 version eventually. Yes.
I'm not certain about reference, since
Yeah.
there's not so much availability, and
Yeah,
they weren't resold by all of the other vendors this time. So I don't expect we will update the reference, and we already have the special edition. But some Radeons, absolutely for sure, will get moved over to Vector 2, along with the majority of the high-selling NVIDIA blocks. And that's really another reason why we waited to roll out all of this stuff. It's not the time to experiment when there's a GPU launch, and we want to spend a few months to make sure everything fits together nicely. And if we had to delay the first reference block because we're waiting to make it work with a distro and a CPU that don't exist yet, it would be unbearable, I'm sure.
We also have some interesting stuff on the table here, now that we have covered Matrix 7 and all of the products that were shown at the EK EXPO. It's a quite special water block, and it's the new EK Lignum water block. We were supposed to roll. So that's the new Lignum water block for the 3080, 3090 reference and the Zotac Trinity, right? But there's also something special about it other than it being the Lignum water block. Joe, what can you tell about the new block?
So, of course, this is the only natural material in our portfolio, and it's really interesting to work with. That it brings its own challenges and its own pleasures. That every single piece is completely unique visually, but also they change over time. So we need to design in the fact that the material can shrink and expand with humidity, and that they actually age, unlike most blocks. And in doing so, the design is really unique. So there can be no rigid fasteners through the wood. Everything needs to be slightly free with some room to breathe, and the mountings which hold it all together are glued and bonded inside, not rigidly fastened like we would usually expect. You can see the wood covers the edges of the top, and similarly the backplate now comes from the other side to completely enclose the entire PCB inside. So this is a little preview to how the vectors are gonna feel when they come, and the Vector 2s, that is. And yeah, we expect compatibility with 3080, 3080 Ti, 3090 reference models, as well as the Zotac, because this is stretched just a little bit compared with the original Vector, so both fit inside very neatly, and we're really hyped to see this, and a little emergence of Lignum builds again, because they're all excellent.
Yeah. About the question for the AMD version of the Lignum block, unfortunately no plans at this moment. Just like Joe mentioned, unfortunately the reference AMD cards have stopped being produced, so there's no point in doing a water block, especially a block that's this rare for a GPU block, which is no longer produced on the market. About the things that we have more on display here, we have physical samples of the gold fittings, so that you can see the actual shade which will be available. This is actually real gold plating on these fittings. It's a really thin gold plating, so don't try to scrape it off. You won't be rich, but it's a really nice finish that we are able to bring to the market. And actually, we won't be bringing it so soon to the market because of the high request of the current fittings, right, Joe?
Yeah, we can't just pull all of our products from going to black plating to put the gold on, otherwise we would be left without. So we must take some time to build the inventory, and also respect that our suppliers need a small break for the summer at times. But the gold fittings will be along in September, and we hope to cover the entire portfolio. I did see some questions earlier if we'll have real gold color rings and compression rings available separately. We can definitely make them. We just need a name so that this one's not gold, because we already have gold.
Yeah. Fake gold, real gold.
And then, of course, also the tubes which we have on the desk, we hope to also show them in gold, so they will be the four colors which span all of our products moving forwards, not black nickel, but nickel, black, satin, titanium, and gold. And of course, one day we would love to add white, but at this time it's not yet possible. The reason behind white is one of our highest demanded options to add to fittings, and we would love to do it, but we also don't want to compromise the perfectly sharp design that we have. So because all of our fittings are turned, they all have really exceptionally sharp corners, really sharp knurling details that are actually broached, like similar to skiving, like the metal is just pushed out. They're not indented like other knurling, so they're super sharp and fine, and painting all this stuff white, if it's a heavy coating, really spoils the shape of the fitting. So when we have a precise, evenly covered and thin coating that lasts for white, then that's something we'll bring too.
Regarding the tubes that we have on display, these are actual samples of our brass tubes, which will be available in like straight pieces of tubes, and we will have the pre-bent tubes as well. We will have 3 finishes available, so the nickel plated ones set in titanium, and we will have the black chrome. All of these colors will be matching our fittings, so that you can do more magic with your builds. The point of these pre-bent metal tubes also again comes down to Matrix7, so that building your loop will be much easier, so that you can build your loop by using only straight tubes or tubes like this, which are already pre-bent, which you would have to cut only to length and then install it onto your build. I think that we are slowly coming to an end of this show. We will peek through the comments again, but before we do that, we have one more neat thingy on our desk here. We are actually waiting for a press release from VSG to be prepared about the fittings, the tubes, and the little combo unit, which is on the far left side, right side for me, right side for me, left side for you, maybe. So Joe, what's special about this combo unit?
So this is the Kinetic and Volume FLT 80 series. As of right now, we have 360, 240, and 120, and this is a smaller addition to those. That's just 80 millimeters in width. This is the smallest practical size we can attach a D5 or a DDC to and still have space for you to fill it and to drain it and to use it. So it stands the same height as a 120 millimeter fan. It's just 80 millimeters wide, so its mountings are the same as a 120 fan in one direction, the same as an 80 in the other, and the fittings can fit either on the front side or on the left side, and that means you can couple it directly inside the build and put this like tight against a window or a side panel in a small form factor case, and you have a drain port permanently on the side, fill port on both sides, and it's uniquely available with a D5 or a DDC. So there are not many tiny D5 reservoirs out there ever, and it's really nice to be able to offer that. And we will also have it available with just the body with no pump included, and the mounting mechanism for both the D5s and DDC series, and it's compatible with the accessories that we showed at CES. So the DDC heatsink and the D5 cover fit onto this tiny guy just the same as the huge reflections.
Questions. I saw something. Jacob asked about are we going to have a 480 crossflow radiator?
Harold has also patiently been asking for
the rings.
No, for 480 crossflow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in the first release we won't have every single version as a crossflow. So the first will be P240, P280 and P360, because as we get through the niches we end up with some products that we would need almost no quantity, and it doesn't make sense for us to even list some of them, let alone make special tooling for the radiator to be assembled. You have all of them again in white, which we don't know if it will be a huge volume. So for now it's those middle sizes. We recognize that they're the most popular, but also the most popular for crossflow because they are the length of a typical case. When you get all the way to 480 and 560 crossflow, it's less likely that a case will have space for end tanks on both sides, and also slightly less practical. One of them is normally buried in the corner of the build, while one is in a good place near the motherboard. I don't expect we'll get to crossflow every single model ever.
We will take a final question and then wrap it up slowly. It's a question about static pressure on the new fans versus the old fans. I think that this static pressure figures will be roughly the same. The main deal will be the new magnetic levitation motor which will be implemented in the fans, but I believe we will also tweak the blades a bit, right?
Yeah, the hub size was actually tweaked and increased slightly, and that may help static pressure at low speed. We also modified the static part of the blade, so the spider on the backside of the fan now has a perfect teardrop shape on the phase fan, and there's also some texture implemented on the surface of the blade. So while we definitely don't expect a massive increase in the static pressure, hopefully it's at a lower airflow, a lower noise level for the airflow, and the same especially at low speeds.
Michael also, I think Michael is a bit concerned about the height of the active backplate on the Founders Edition 3090. So how much is the active backplate adding to the thickness of the block, and is this an issue with the RAM slots?
So the active backplate on the Special Edition stands 12 millimeters higher than the original backplate. So if you don't have 12 millimeters of space everywhere above the current installed backplate and block, then you won't have space there for the active backplate. That's not to say it couldn't be installed in a vertical configuration or in a lower slot. This is a really big challenge because the PCB is so small that if we made a smaller block inside it, it would really both disrupt the design and not be covering as much as you'd want it to cover. So since the hybrid solution is so good, for the Founders Edition you really don't have any memory junction temp problems there. We chose to go a bit thicker and design the product which everyone would absolutely love if they have the space for it. The overall thickness is still within 2 slots, so if NVIDIA let you buy enough, then you can stick 4 on one motherboard, which I desperately want to see.
Yeah. Guess it's slowly time to wrap things up. Thank you everyone for being with us, asking questions, commenting, giving feedback, and maybe for the end we can ask the question which we brought up at the start of the show. Would you rather see all black radiators, or we are allowed to do the radiators in a way where you have the end caps silver, which would also bring to later accessories, meaning that you will be able to replace the end piece with black, green, red and blue aesthetic pieces. So once again, thanks everyone for sticking around. If you like our stuff, press the like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, newsletter, and hopefully see you soon again in a similar show. So thanks everyone.
Yep, it was great to be on the show, and you may even find us before the next expo with another Quantum live stream. So make sure to subscribe, and we'll be back. Oh. Hello.
Whatever. Longer.
I don't normally do this all day.
Yes.
Strictly Quantum.